We're getting ready to bring out the panel to start the discussion on anxiety on the field of play. We have some awesome panelists up here, very accomplished in many areas of the world of sports, and we bring them out here to introduce them. So hopefully you guys can come over. If you have kids, or if you're thinking about anything with your children going into sports, this is one of the big reasons I like to participate in this one and introduce it. We've done this a couple times. You'll hear some great conversation. I'm going to start off by bringing out Katrina Adams. So, Katrina, former president and chairman of the U.S. Tennis Association and U.S. Open, television host and author, former tennis player, former president and chairman, as I mentioned, also co-host of We Need to Talk, CBS Sports Network, global speaker, and author of Own the Arena book, which we published next year in September. Please welcome Katrina. We'll go with participant number 2. We'll bring out Eric Surkamp. So for those of you that are local, Eric is a local guy, Major League Baseball player, patience, persistent, hard work, confidence, preparation, the skills and characteristics that vaulted Eric Surkamp to success as a Major League Baseball pitcher has served him well in his career as a real estate agent. As a standout player at Moeller High School, so give it up for Moeller, for local guy here. Then on to North Carolina State University. Eric's drive, ambition, and ability to perform under pressure led to a 9-year Major League Baseball career, including earning a World Series ring, which he has with him, if you see the giant hardware on his hand, as a part of the San Francisco Giants in 2012 championship season. Next, I'd like to bring out Cobi Jones. Cobi's a former American professional soccer player and analyst for the Los Angeles Galaxy on Spectrum Sportsnet. If you watched any of the World Cup, you can't avoid seeing Cobi. So I watch all the World Cup. You see lots and lots of Cobi. You can also see him on Fox Sports, BN Sports, the Pac-12 Network, and he's the co-host of Fubo TV's Players Lounge. A 3-time U.S. Men's World Cup player, Cobi is also a member of the 1992 U.S. Olympic soccer team. Please welcome Cobi. And then last, but definitely not least, I'd like to bring out Natalie Coughlin. So Natalie is a 12-time Olympic and 20-time World Championship medalist swimmer. Natalie has been a brand ambassador with Luvo Food since 2015. So Natalie, it's a fantastic partnership. Luvo's in my freezer all the time. Me and my son love it, eat it constantly. Great food. She works tirelessly with organizations like Right to Play, Edible Schoolyard, MOVE, and Women's Sports Foundation to promote active living, balanced eating, and the participation of girls and women in sport. Natalie is passionate about nutrition and cooking. She has competed on the Food Network's Chopped Show, prepared her favorite recipes on the Today Show, and appeared as a guest judge on Super Chef Battle, an Iron Chef America event. Natalie attributes much of her success to eating well and has recently released her debut cookbook, Cook to Thrive. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Katrina so we can get started.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out for this exciting panel, and thank you all for being here today. So you've heard the introductions, you've heard their bios. So, each of you have performed at the highest level of your respective sports. And this talk is about anxiety. Share with us, the audience, what has been one of the highest contributors of anxiety that you've experienced, whether it was in training, whether it was in performing, whether it was in preparation. And I'll start with you, Natalie.
Oh man, there's a lot of anxiety in sport for me. I'm an individual athlete, a swimmer. So when you say anxiety in sports, I immediately think of the Olympic Games and the Olympic finals. And I remember being, this last 60 minutes before my race, and the next couple minutes determines the success of me financially for the next several years, or perhaps even my life. So when you think about that, that's quite terrifying. And the way that I dealt with it oftentimes was to kind of get that 10,000-foot view and step back and think, this isn't life or death. This is swimming 2 laps down the pool. This is silly that I'm so nervous. So once I stepped back from it, that really, really helped me deal with the anxiety.
Well, to follow up with that, the Olympics come every 4 years. Was it more stressful trying to qualify for the Olympics, or was it just what you just described?
I don't think I'll ever experience a type of stress of the Olympic Games. Qualifying is very difficult because the American team in swimming is very, very strong. You need to get first or second to make the Olympic team, and oftentimes the person who gets third place might be the third best in the world. So that third place person could potentially medal at the Olympic Games, but we're limited. So getting to the Olympics is very, very difficult. And then in the next 4 to 6 weeks, you have to turn around and compete at the Olympic Games on top of it. So that entire period is, it ages you.
Right.
It's awesome. I am so fortunate that I have experienced 3 Olympic Games, and but I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore.
There you go. Well, congratulations on your career.
Thank you.
Eric, world champion. Woohoo! That's awesome. So to get there, you went through every level, started in the minor leagues and then the major leagues. Let's talk about what some of your experiences have been.
Yeah, I would say most of my anxiety didn't come from on the field playing. It came from more trying to fit in the locker room. I'm probably more nervous now speaking in front of 40 people than I was playing in front of 40,000 people for whatever reason. But when you're coming up, I was 24 years old when I made my debut in the big leagues, and I came up to a team with the San Francisco Giants that was very veteran-heavy team. So walking into a clubhouse with guys that have played in the big leagues for 15, some of them 20 years, really just like almost looking for acceptance from them was nerve-wracking in its own. And as silly as it sounds, and I know this has been echoed by other players who have come up and been in similar situations, it was as simple, these little things like, you know, should you go get food before the veteran players go eat their dinner, or do you let them go? Where you should sit on the airplane. It was like those little things that would get to you, and if you let it get to you, it would affect your play on the field. So I think that's where most of mine came from.
And Cobi, you also came up in a team environment. Why don't you share some of your experiences?
Interesting enough, for me, my anxiety throughout my career, I had it not during training, not in the locker room. I always got along well there with my teammates, but I got it before every game. You know, every match, just knowing the import, kind of along the lines of what you said of every meet, of what that meant. And there would be an anxiousness from my high school days until my last day as a professional. It was still there. How I handled it was I guess you would say almost like a meditation or some type of way, in that I would always have rituals where I would do the exact same thing before every game. So it kind of got me into a routine. If it was being the last person in line, you know, before, as we're walking out to the field, if it was making sure that I got the water from the trainer right before the field, got the gum from him, and then sprayed him with water, and then spit it out. Those were little things that helped me adjust and know that, okay, I'm ready, and kind of took me away from that anxiety and kind of put me in the right frame of mind to say, okay, I'm ready to prepare. I'm ready for the game and this match that's before me. So it was, I didn't know it then. I do now, as we see this mindfulness and wellness, you know, come to the forefront, that I was really putting myself in a state of meditation of doing the same thing repetitively over and over.
No, that's great. And that brings me to the next question. And Natalie, you know, when you talk about practice makes you perfect, we've all heard that before. Were you more anxious into your practice and preparation, or more anxious in the actual performance?
Oh, I loved practice so much. I was one of those few athletes that loved it. Like, even though as a swimmer, I was getting up at 4 a.m. most mornings and spending anywhere from 2 to 4 hours in the water, 2 hours in the gym, taking naps, making sure I'm eating all the right things. I loved training so much. And so, yes, training was all about practicing perfection. And perfection doesn't exist, but it doesn't mean you can't try to strive for it. And as much as I could control those details in practice and get that into your muscle memory. That helps with anxiety once you get to the competition, because all it is at the competition is executing what you practice.
Right.
So if you practice the right things, you're going to execute under stressful conditions when, things might not be going your way. You rely on the 10,000 hours of training, and oftentimes it's a lot more than 10,000 hours. So you do everything as perfectly as possible in training, and then you just rely on it when you compete.
See, I was one of those players. I was a tennis player, and so as a kid, I just wanted to compete. I didn't want to practice.
Yes.
But as you became a professional or a really college player and professional, you realized that you had to practice the way that you wanted to compete. So that's great insight for any of you parents that are out there, or grandparents that maybe have an athlete in your family. So Eric, you came up in a team environment. Baseball is all about team. Did you have your own personal team that you surrounded yourself with, whether it was as a young player before you got to college or after you became a professional, that kept you on track outside of what the organization was providing you?
Yeah, I would say when I was younger, my team was probably my family more than anything. I had a pitching coach who I went to from, I was probably 8 years old when I first started going to him, all the way up through high school. And then as I progressed into college and pro sports, I had a trainer who I would go work out with he was out of Florida, Eric Surkamp. But other than that, it's really like the organizations that I were a part of kind of provided that structure for you, whether it was workout, diet. I know we were talking about backstage with this festival going on, that they kind of gave you the blueprint for what you needed to do to be successful.
Yeah, that's great. And so that blueprint, Cobi, we talk about our end goals. We talk about the rituals. What was the thing that you focus on the most that helped you stay focused on the end goal as opposed to the process itself that maybe eliminated some of the anxiety?
No, it's funny, the end goal, that's what we're all looking forward to, right? If it's the championship game, it's the daily goal. For me, the process of thinking about a little bit of what you said is focusing on what was right in front of me. The daily practice, would lead to the next step. It was always taking that first step within the day to get to the next step. That was probably the most important thing for me. One thing that helped me kind of stay focused on the next thing was my support group. That support group that I had around me. It wasn't so much people within the soccer hemisphere, because it was a burgeoning sport when I started playing. It just kind of is coming to the forefront. It was mainly my family and friends. And I have to say, it was extremely important that I believe that my friends at that time couldn't have cared a lick that I played soccer. They did not care that I was a professional at all, because they didn't know anything about it. So it was good for me to actually be immersed in the soccer world, but when I stepped away from it, I had this support group of friends that really didn't care. So, and they were more about, okay, well, what are you focused on for your life going next? What's the next thing that you're doing? And that kind of helped me kind of be able to focus my attentions on, okay, the one step at a time.
No, that's great. Natalie, what advice would you give to our audience who may have a child, grandchild, niece, nephew, that aspire to be a professional athlete of some form? What advice would you give them for them to focus on now in their daily rituals of enjoying the sport, whatever that might be, for what it is today, that can get them to that end goal of theirs?
I think the biggest thing that parents and young athletes and just the support team can help people realize that the challenges and the obstacles along the way oftentimes are your greatest assets, or can be the greatest assets if you have the right mindset. So I look back on my career and some of the biggest setbacks for me, missing my first Olympic team in 2000, I set the stage to be one of the best, youngest athletes in the U.S., ended up tearing my labrum and missing my first Olympic team in 2000. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because not only did I get so close to my goal and then miss it, what that forced me to do is reevaluate my goals. It lit a fire under me to not only make the Olympic team, but I want to win gold medals. I want to break world records. It elevated the level of my goals because I had gotten so close to that success that I dreamt for and aspired to achieve for so many years. So it's hard in the moment when you have an injury or you have some sort of setback. You stumble along the way, figuratively or literally. But if you have the right mindset and you look at it the right way, this is a learning opportunity. What could I have done better in this moment? If you look at it in that way, it empowers you, it gives you direction, and oftentimes it'll make you so much better.
There you go. And so, Eric, it's a learning experience, and in sports, it's all about learning life skills. We learn how to work harder, how to be dedicated, how to deal with adversity, anxiety. What are some of the things that you learn the most that have helped you prepare yourself to what your profession is now?
I would think from an early age, and this kind of ties into what Natalie was talking about, never get too high, never get too low, kind of just always be even-keeled, act like you've been there before. I look back on it, I kind of wish I would have probably celebrated some of those successes maybe a little bit more, because you don't have them anymore. But I think that was one of the things that made me successful versus maybe my other teammates or whatever along the way climbing the system. You would see guys who would just get so down or so high and low, and just like that emotional roller coaster that they ride throughout the course of a 162-game season really takes a toll on you. So I'd say, I'm in real estate now, and I try to kind of keep the same attitude. I mean, we're commission-based, so like the sales only come so often. So just trying not to...
As a real estate agent.
Yeah, as a real estate agent. So trying not to, I guess, maybe freak out when you don't have a sale for a month or two, and just trust the process. And kind of back to the training thing, for me it was visualization, that you kind of are training that subconscious mind, and it's like an unconscious confidence that you're training for when you are in the sport and when you are playing, that you're not thinking about what your body is doing. You're really just trying to execute your game plan and whatever that may be. Because as soon as you're thinking about where your arm is going or something like that, you totally lose focus on what your goal is.
No, absolutely. So this panel is about anxiety in high-performance sports, but when parents get their kids into sport for the first time, it's not to be a professional athlete, it's to introduce them to an activity, if you will. What advice would you give, Cobi, to a parent that's just introducing their child to the sport for the first time?
I would say, and I'm sure we've all heard this before, most importantly is make sure that they're having fun. That's got to be put out there first and foremost, because if they're not having fun, they're not going to enjoy the sport. Secondly, is teach them about the sport, because I've found that kids that actually learn a little bit more about the sport that they're participating in tend to enjoy it a little bit more. And it's so important that we understand all the lessons that kids can learn, through participating in sport, be it individual sports, be it team sports. Going back to your question earlier, one of the things that I always try to get across is the life lessons that sports give you. And one of the biggest ones, and everyone out there knows this, it crosses over into what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, sports. Because one thing that we've all experienced, when you're on a team or part of a group, you're never going to like everybody, on that team or within that group. But you find a way to come together and go towards that common goal, because it is a common goal for everyone there. So those are some of the things that I think the life lessons that are learned by young kids. Some of the things that I think as parents, you should understand the importance of putting your kids into these sports and why make sure that they enjoy it so that they stick with it, for the long term. That's the ultimate goal, right? Is that they have fun, that they learn something new, and that hopefully they can, get to the level that all of us up here have gotten to.
So one of the challenges that I've seen in our sport of tennis is that we have parents who become the coaches, and parents who may have been very good players themselves and missed the boat, and they want to live through their child to get to that next level. Have you had any experiences with that parent being that coach and seeing the level of anxiety raise for the child more so than the parent? Anyone can jump in on this one.
I've definitely seen that. My husband's a coach, and he coaches kids, mainly high school age kids, but anywhere from 6 to 20. And you do see this where the parents, whether they swam or not, a lot of times, oftentimes they haven't swum, but they think they have some sort of expertise level that the coach doesn't have. It comes down to a trust factor, I think, a lot of times between the athlete, the coach, and the parents. It also comes down to letting go. But one of the best things I always saw, looking back at my own experience, is my parents knew nothing about swimming. They absolutely knew nothing about swimming, and I loved that. They came to the meets and came to practice to support me, to help me achieve my goals through love and support, but they never once criticized how I was swimming or tried to give me any sort of tips. I think it's really important that parents and coaches have a very distinct line. The parents are there to love and support. The coaches are there to coach. That makes it so much healthier for the athlete to know who to go to and when. It gets really messy, I think, when that line gets blurred.
So having said that, every parent is a coach of something. Not every parent, but many parents are a coach of something. As you said, your husband is a coach. Do you recommend that the parents coach their child maybe early on, and then once the child starts to develop, hand them off to another expert so that you can keep a parent relationship separate from a coach relationship? Eric?
Yeah, my dad coached me when I was younger in youth sports, and once I did get to the high school level, he kind of backed off.
Great job, Dad.
Yeah.
Great job.
But I would say, family, definitely the most important thing is for support. And I'm sure we had some blowout fights over the years when he called me after a game and tried to tell me that I threw the wrong pitch or something like that. But I would say, especially for an athlete, if you do have a game where you struggle, and you're calling your family, you really are, you're just looking for an outlet, kind of a way to get away from it a little bit. That's probably not the first thing that I wanted to hear all the time was, you should have done this or you should have done that. But for the most part, just kind of having that escape that you could kind of put it behind you and move on and kind of turn it into a positive.
So since you had that relationship and it was successful, what advice would you give to a parent whose child is on a competitive track, but perhaps the parent wants more than you, the athlete, does? How do you get them to understand the difference?
Good question. I would say that, you can never make your son or daughter want it more. I think they really have to want it. They have to have that inner drive in themselves. And if they don't have it, maybe it's not for them. Because I think part of it is, Natalie said she loved training. She loved all that. You really have to love the process of, whether it's training or for us, Natalie, training was kind of her practice, where ours, you had to practice and then you had to do the training piece on the side to improve your body and stuff like that. And you really, there were guys that I played with in college who, they were just kind of happy to be on the team and wanted to be a part of the team and stuff like that, who maybe didn't have aspirations to play pro ball in the future, which is totally fine, and that's great. But if somebody's going to try to take it to that next level, you have to love every individual piece that goes along with it.
Absolutely. So we have a few minutes left, and I'd like each of you to spend a couple minutes to talk about, anxiety comes, you get anxiety when you have the unknown. Now, when we were professional athletes, we kind of knew what we had to do each and every day and what our end goal was. And then we retired. And so I had a level of anxiety and understanding what was next for me. What was your experience with the anxiety moving to the next career as to where you are now, or maybe the career of where you were when you immediately retired, if it's not the same? And Cobi, I know you're an analyst and do a lot of other things, so we'll start with you.
Well, for myself, it was a bit traumatic, to be quite honest. Soccer in this country was just really kind of gaining its feet, so to speak, and there was no support beyond the game. So literally, once you're done, that's it, done. You didn't have a trainer anymore, didn't have the coach anymore, didn't have your friends that you were there with every day, day in and day out. The story that I love to tell is that, like, I remember just, as we all had our trainers, it's like, oh, I feel sick. They make a call, you're in the doctor's office by 2 o'clock after training, boom, you're going through the back door and you're out in 30 minutes. I remember calling the doctor after I was done and saying, hey, I need to see you, I'm not feeling well. And they're like, okay, we got an appointment next week. And I was like, what are you talking about next week? I'm not feeling good right now. So these were a lot of the issues from going from being a professional athlete to that one day you're done to finding out, what do I do now? And I had to handle all of that. So I was very anxious during that time, and it was literally depending upon that support group, my friends, my family, to slowly kind of move me down that path to understand what I needed to do and to go about it the right way. And to be quite honest, I'm still handling it to this day, dealing with it every single day.
No, great. Natalie?
I think the biggest thing is having an exit plan. And that's so difficult for athletes, especially Olympic athletes. You're so focused on that every 4 years and the lead up to that, to making that Olympic team. And then you make it or you don't make it. And then all of a sudden it's over, and what would I do now? As someone, I knew it was eventually going to end, so I tried to set up my life in that way. So I started, my winery, and I work with all these great companies and got a degree, and so that that it's going to end, and you have to prepare for it. But what I see as someone who's involved with the U.S. Olympic Paralympic Committee and USA Swimming is the athletes that want to focus on their sport and cannot even think beyond the sport, because if they allow themselves to think outside of their sport, they're not giving 100%. And so it's a really big struggle. And that's why you see with so many Olympic athletes that post-Olympic depression, because you have that high, and then all of a sudden it's taken away in a day or in a few weeks. It's tough. But speaking from personal experience, I knew it was going to end, and I just started to prepare for the future while I was still competing. And so it made that transition really easy for me, or relatively easy.
Right. Wonderful. And Eric?
Yeah, I would say I wish I would have prepared more for or putting an exit plan in place. Everybody, I was surrounded by coaches who were former players, and they all said, it's going to end like that before you know it. And I was in a position where I was literally playing in the big leagues, and then I actually went and played in South Korea in their professional league and trained all off season. And then all of a sudden I just couldn't get signed by anyone. I couldn't even get a minor league contract to go play anywhere. And it was kind of like, holy cow, it's totally over. So it hits you. And I was fortunate enough, I was able to take a year off, go back, finish my degree, kind of reevaluate what I wanted my new passion to be in life, I guess. Because I think we all have a work ethic that was instilled in us as an athlete that you can kind of redirect that in a different way. And I just found it was real estate. It was always something I was interested in. And so for me, I've actually broken away from baseball. I know they're kind of still involved in their sport, but I tried to do the baseball lessons and things like that, but I really had to almost find like a new identity for myself. I didn't want, everybody who knew me back home. I wasn't like Eric Surkamp, the baseball player, even though that is a big part of me, and I still try to leverage that in different ways. But I kind of wanted to make a new identity for myself in a different field.
Well, you will always be a World Series champion. You'll always be an Olympic swimmer. You'll always be a professional soccer player, and I'll always be a professional tennis player. And, I want to thank you all for sharing your stories and experiences, because anxiety comes in so many forms and fashion. It's not just in sport, it's in anything that we do in our everyday life and in our profession. So hopefully we were able to inspire you all and give you some insight further into what anxiety means and how it can really affect each of us individually and each of you individually. And I hope you enjoyed our session and enjoy the rest of the festival. So thank you all.
Do you have time to take a question or two?
Yes.
Who has a question for our group? Of course, and you were a professional athlete in what, sir?
Insurance. So talking about anxiety and nerves, all of you have had the opportunity to represent the United States on an international level, wearing the red, white, and blue across your chest. But just talk about, while doing that, what was your not greatest achievement, but the most fun you had while doing that, where really anxiety and nerves were past because you were just
winning.
In the moment. You were winning, exactly. Thank you. Said much better.
Oh, man.
Red, white, and blue. That's you.
Okay. It's hard to think of one. I have so many memories from the Olympic Games, but I will say the first time that you see the American flag raised when you're winning, on the podium, seeing the American flag being raised, hearing the national anthem is the most special thing. And fortunately for me, my first Olympic Games was in 2004. It was Athens, Greece, and it was actually quite an intimate atmosphere for an Olympics. There was only, I think, 7,000 people in the crowd. So when I won my first gold medal in the 100 backstroke, I'm on the podium, have the laurel wreath, hear the national anthem being played, watch the flag being raised, and I was able to look into the stands and see my entire family. See my now husband, my parents, grandparents, godfather, sister, best friends, and to be able to share that moment with them was so incredible. It was so incredible. My Olympic Games after that, they were huge, 20,000 people. I'm never going to find my family in that crowd. So that was a really, really special thing for me.
I had a little bit of time to think about a special moment. Like you said, there's many, but the one that stands out for me was the 2002 World Cup, representing the U.S. and going up against Mexico in that World Cup, because within our local region, within CONCACAF, there's always been a battle. Is it U.S. or Mexico? That's the top of the charts. And then we finally met up on the biggest stage, the grandest stage during the World Cup, in a knockout round, and we were able to come out of that on top with a significant victory, a 2-0 victory, where we actually dominated a lot of the play. So for me, that was thank you. that was the special moment that to this day I'm very proud of, to have been a part of. Proud to have had the crest, wearing the crest at that time, the U.S. crest, and I still get to brag to all my Mexican friends still a little bit that I still got one up. No matter what happens, I got that above them. So that's it.
Well, listen, I want to thank you again. Please help me give them a round of applause. Very much appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and continue to have a great weekend, everybody.